And welcome to the Islander Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I believe this is our 8th episode. As you can see, we don't have video today, just our voices. We are currently in two different provinces again. I'm in Alberta, finishing my work placement and here for the summer to work. And then I will be back to the good land in September. And I have my good friend and co-host with me today, Ernest. How is it in Newfoundland, my friend?
Still cold. Still rather cold. It was somewhat warm today, but as it is Newfoundland, it is cold. And as some of our listeners or future listeners will know, I was in South America, so it was a lot different, and it's still taking me some getting used to. But on the bright side, I've got some nice shoes, so that's what's important.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's when I flew up here on May 18th, it was 32 degrees. It was 7 when I left Newfoundland. I got here, it was 32. It was hot for a week, and then it went to like 17 all week, and we near froze to death.
Yeah, it's 16 here now, which is still very, very different.
I can imagine. So
but,
what did you
I guess? No, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there. So Dwight Ball managed to wiggle his way out of a sticky situation.
He sure did. I think there was. I think there might have been some worry with all these harassment allegations earlier in May, but he seems to have overcome it.
I think he did, but I mean, I think it's less to do with Dwight's leadership and more to do with the way the Liberal Party is looking in the polls. I mean, Ches Crosby has a somewhat of a bigger lead over Dwight Ball lately. And honestly, I think that scared them into, saying, listen, we can't risk getting rid of Dwight. We can't take this this chance right now. So we are safer holding on for power for one more year and having him at the helm of the ship, and maybe we'll be able to pull our way out of it again. But I think, though, that the damage is done. The party has humiliated itself over these bullying allegations. It's just showing that how toxic the caucus is, and especially the cabinet. I mean, 2 senior ministers. I mean, Eddie Joyce, who's been there for, a century, to say the least. And then, Dale Kirby, who, a lot of us, I mean, if you're involved in Newfoundland politics or around Newfoundland politics, Dale Kirby is not exactly Mr. Nice guy who plays by the rules. I mean, when he was with the NDP, he did stab Lorraine Michael in the back with Jerry Rogers and George Murphy and I believe Chris Mitchellmore. So, his behavior, I wasn't really too surprised about. But what I was surprised is that how swiftly the premier acted on this, and it helped him a little bit. But at the same time, the damage is still done because it does raise that question: what's going on in the caucus? I mean, if there's so much infighting, what have they really accomplished? And I mean, and it shows. I mean, this has been a really uneventful government, minus the big budget scare back in 2016, and was that the killer budget?
I believe it was their first budget as a government, was it not?
It was 2016 because the Liberals got in November, I believe, or was that the federal Liberals? I'm trying to remember now.
I think our elections are aligned right now.
Yeah, so
one might be September and the other one might be November. Maybe.
No, I think it was. No, I think it was the Liberals. The federal Liberals won before the provincials. I remember that much.
Okay. Yeah.
So because I did work on a few campaigns, so I know the way that went. But
did find numbers.
Yep.
June 5th,
okay.
But your poll numbers?
Yep.
June the 5th, according to Corporate Research Associates poll, CRA, I hear them a lot on NTV. The Liberals had, the PCs have 42%, a popular vote. The Liberals had 36, the NDP had 22. And it doesn't say what other was, but I mean that adds up to 100 anyway. So
yeah. I'm not going to be able. I can't see a minority government coming. I mean, going a little bit off topic from the leadership convention. I mean, if there was an election tomorrow, I can't see the NDP forming even a partnership, because if they had Alison Coffin, I think they would have had a very strong chance. But Jerry Rogers was the safe bet. You know, she was the one who appealed to that extreme left for part of the NDP, and she was the one who, she wasn't going to rock the boat or really, you know, go off script. And I think Alison Coffin would have. She would have done things as an economist that wouldn't have been completely in line with what the NDP believes in. And I think that thought went through their heads. And that's why Jerry Rogers was elected in, because she is the safe, and frankly, she's boring. She's not an exciting candidate. I'm not trying to sound what's the word, ageist or anything, but she's old. She's a lot. Alison Coffin, I believe, is in her 40s, early 50s. Jerry Rogers is in her 60s. I mean, and she never strikes me as outside of, you know, social justice issues, as a very energetic person. And plus, that gaffe of hers that I studied at the London. I had an invitation to study at the London School of Economics. I mean, if that's the summary of your economic experience or your economic ability and training, you're dead. Metaphorically speaking, politically speaking. I mean, you're done. And Ches Crosby, I mean, is the best right now out of all the three parties. He's, you know, from a politically, you know, connected family that has produced one prime minister of Newfoundland, a federal cabinet minister. You know, for Newfoundland and Labrador, his family is essentially aristocracy. They're royalty. You know, they're one of the old guard who has stayed here beyond Confederation. None of the other old families did. I mean, the Bonds are gone. The Squires are gone. The Alderdice family and things like that. You know, these people are all gone away and, you know, moved out. I mean, Newfoundland actually, Lenny, I'll tell you a fun fact. Newfoundland actually has a baron. There is a baron of St. John's who has never been to St. John's.
It's funny.
He is the descendant of a prime minister of Newfoundland, Edward Morris, and who was then, after World War I, made Baron Morris, and then went to England and never came back. The stereotypical Newfoundland.
Not much has changed.
No, he was the trendsetter.
Yeah, I personally, I have I don't have doubts about Ches. I'm worried when he became leader, not in his ability. I'm sure he's a very intelligent man. He has the education behind him, as does Jerry Rogers. So just, I think politically they're both a little boring. And I mean, that's not a shot at them, but they're both very smart. And if they do happen to become the premier, either one of them, I'm sure they're more than capable of doing the job. I'm just worried that their showmanship is not really there. I mean, you take NDP strong leaders like who was it? Tommy Douglas, I believe was one of the first
Jack
one
Layton.
ever to make a big splash. Jack Layton. But these guys were exciting. They got you excited about social issues and explained how to pay for it. Explained this is how we can maneuver money around, not to basically break your back in taxes and still be able to support the ones that temporarily cannot support themselves. But the other ones don't ever sell that message, I don't find. Like, they just say, well, we're going to throw all this money at this problem. I don't know where it's coming from, but we're going to put it all there anyway. And that's
and I mean,
that scares me.
You see, the problem with groups like the NDP is that, and Margaret Thatcher said it best, socialism uses other people's money. You know, and socialism is only good, I should say, when you spend other people's money. But when you run out, you know, the party's up. And the thing is, socialism, as someone who's been experienced with it myself, Now, by the way, I might be misquoted on Margaret Thatcher. I don't have her exact wording, but the gist of it was there. But the thing is about socialism is that I feel that at least the socialism of our era, Lenny, is that it really doesn't come up with ideas to, create growth. It just take, we have to take from the rich. We have to tax the corporations. We have to take somebody else's money to pay for this. But we're not really going to come up and somehow, some way, everything's going to balance itself out eventually. But, well, when that happens, Lenny, we have Venezuela. Because the government has taken everyone else's money, and now there is no money, and that is why it costs 4 million bolivars, or the equivalent of a doctor's salary in a month, to buy a McDonald's Happy Meal. And that is as of a couple of days ago, because that's what a friend of mine in Venezuela tried to do with her monthly pay. She spent her entire pay on one Happy Meal. So. But either way, we should get back to the leadership convention.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
But I mean, it was a nice little diversion there, and it put some things into context. The problem with this for the Liberals now is that for now, it's smooth sailing, But there is, if we're going to use being a Newfoundland, we have to use nautical terms. There is a storm on the horizon, and I think it's going to either sink the ship or, at least punch a good hole through it.
Well, he got 79% voted against the leadership review, which means he would stay their leader in 2019. And that's down from just over 90% only 2 years ago. So, I mean, there has been some issues, no doubt. Whether they're his fault or not, I'm not sure, but he will be blamed for them nonetheless. I think come 2019, if he only has 79%, which is an overwhelming number in a party, I don't know what that looks like for the people in Newfoundland, because you have the rural Newfoundland people who know about regionalization and they absolutely hate it. And then you're going to have Chess Crosby on your back, who I would imagine probably doesn't mind playing some dirty politics.
I don't think Chess Crosby is going to do that, to be honest. He doesn't need to, because, you see, the Liberals have gotten themselves in that deep of a pickle with all the little scandals here and there that Chess doesn't really need to punch below the belt. I mean, the Liberals have given him plenty of ammunition. It's a government that is disorganized, unruly, and, essentially just a toxic work environment. There's nothing but, and I mean, all you have to say is like, listen, we are not going to be, we're not going to be having bullying going around. We're not going to be ignoring other MHAs because, we don't like them. We are going to be a strong, unified government who gets things done for you. And we're not going to have this pettiness that seems to be haunting the Liberals, because the Liberal Party is right now, it comes off as a very petty-minded party. I mean, you've got Eddie Joyce going around harassing people who he doesn't like, and that makes the other MHAs a bit worried to speak up. And for God's sakes, Eddie was in charge of municipal affairs. He is. I mean, for rural Newfoundland, he is essentially the top man. Next to
his writing absolutely loves him. I mean, he is stolen his God Eddie down there. I think like this man will do anything. And
he's got a good reputation. Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know. I think he'll win his seat again if the Liberals do have him. And this is another interesting fact. I mean, you built both of these people from a cabinet position, and I believe they're still sitting as independents, are they not?
They are, but they're also not. They have not been in the House since the incident. They've been off without pay, or been off with pay, which is frankly annoying to me. And
so what do you do?
But I mean, I can understand.
Do you find someone to run in that area? So you're taking two of your strongest people that made a blunder, and a big blunder, and one that shouldn't be tolerated. But is that
now
the Liberals are going to need to win this time?
They are. They do need the West Coast, as much as they hate to admit it, because the the East Coast is generally, NDP and Tory. So they're going to have a hard time here. But see, the thing is that they can sacrifice Dale Kirby because, he's only a fence jumper anyway. He went from NDP to Liberal. And then, they've cast him out. They can't bring Dale Kirby back because he's literally put his foot in it. I mean, that email he sent out telling people pretty much to clam up and shut up. That's not going to help him. The opposition parties are going to have a field day in his district. Mount Sion is going to go. I think Mount Sion is I hate to say it, based on the past, Mount Sion may go NDP, depending on who the Tories put there as a candidate, because, based on its history. But if the Liberals want it, what they need to do is put someone, say, for example, like George Murphy, who was at the Liberal Party convention this weekend.
Fun fact on George Murphy.
Yep.
Let me find. I just highlighted it. So I'll read a blurb here from the CBC story, CBC Newfoundland Labrador.
Yep.
One of the delegates endorsing Ball is former NDP MHA George Murphy. Murphy, who was elected as an NDP member in 2011, had previously put his name forward on a ballot for the Liberals in 2003. He says he's done with the New Democratic Party and returning to the Liberals was like moving back home. Murphy said he misses politics and hasn't ruled out running again, but wants to talk more with his family before making the decision. So it sounds like if he runs, it's under a red banner.
Yeah, and George Murphy will have a very good shot because, Murphy is popular. He is, that man of the people.
Yeah.
And, I listen, I might not agree with everything George Murphy says, but I like George Murphy. He's plucky, he's scrappy, and I enjoy that. And like I said, if he were to go in Dale Kirby's riding and try it, and because Mount Sion is around St. John, it's in that area. I think he's got a very strong chance, but they're not going to beat Eddie Joyce in Humber Bay Islands.
No.
That's not going to happen. And the thing is that Eddie's also put his foot in it. They can't welcome him back. Or, listen, if I was an opposition strategist, and God, I hope someday I am, but I would say, look at this. The Liberals are two-faced. One, they say that they can't abide bullying, and they'll take drastic steps to correct it. And yet here they are letting the bully back into the schoolyard. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. The Liberals will not win. Will not win Humber Bay Islands, I think.
No, it's going to be a rough riding win. Just take the flooding that happened in January, I believe.
Yep.
Little Rapids that way. Eddie was out there with the boys with a vest on, bringing out chicken.
He was.
Yeah.
And I don't think Eddie Joyce is going to go back to the Liberals now. They've pretty much dragged him through the mud. They sacrificed him. They tossed him away despite, umpteen years. He's been in MHA on and off for about 20 odd years. So, to do this to him is an absolute smack in the mouth. And as someone who I've been around Eddie Joyce, I've seen him in action. Not as much as I could. So, I'm only going to go on from what I've seen. Eddie Joyce is not going to be so, ready to jump back into the Liberal Party. They disgraced him. And if they come back to him hat in hand, I would just say the heck with it and go independent. Because I think if he did that and said, listen, this is the way they treat me, who's done everything for my community, for my district, I'm going to sit in opposition. I'm going to sit in as an independent again, because Tories are not going to take him, and they damn well shouldn't, because he is, like I said, him and Kirby are now toxic. So I say Kirby is done next election. I don't think he'll rerun. He'll probably end up resigning and going back to teaching at MUN. And Eddie will probably challenge his seat again. That's my prediction on this. But we'll have to go back to this next at election time and see if Ernest was right.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be something interesting. And you know what? If it comes back that the harassment allegations are true, be done with them anyway. Because no matter how good you are to your people, that does not give you the right to treat people any less than they deserve. So if the both of them did it, and it comes back that they did it, rightfully so. They should be removed from the party and sit as an independent, and that's the way it should be. Now, if it comes back that they didn't do it, well, then Mr. Ball got a different problem on his hands that I don't think he's ready for.
No, I mean, and Dwight Ball has gotten enough black eyes. He's gotten way too many.
Mm-hmm.
This has been, I personally, I mean, and I know that he's indirectly, he's not completely responsible for this, but his premiership has been incredibly rough.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a horrible train wreck of a Liberal government. They've essentially accomplished nothing. They, and combine that with, the whirlwind that is Donald Trump, who has, essentially hinted at a trade war with Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and who the Canadians are personally, and I think foolishly, attempting to go up against, because one thing Uncle Sam has is economic power. And
Mm-hmm.
even if Canada stands behind our country and boycotts buying U.S. goods, it's not going to make a big enough dent, because the United States has that kind of clout that they can go anywhere and get a trade deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to go to the same old...
with China. So
yeah, but you see, that's the thing. But the thing is that the Chinese respect him. That's the crazy part. Even though he's been causing them headaches, he's playing hardball. And listen, we've got to admit, like, the Chinese are a little too big for their boots right now. And one thing we don't need is an authoritarian regime being a major economic player. I mean, that personally makes me a bit nervous. Especially one that is as repressive as China. And let's not kid ourselves, they're bad. They, like, stuff they've done is, just as bad as North Korea.
No, I agree.
Yeah. But I think, here's this funny thing. Fun fact. They call Donald Trump the Great Commander. Do you know what they... No, but do you know what they call Justin Trudeau?
I'm afraid to know.
The Little Potato.
Excellent.
So we are pretty much, the children of the Little Potato, which is terrifying. And also incorrect, because Justin Trudeau is from Quebec, not PEI, so he should be, the Little Poutine.
I stand with Trudeau on this, just because I think we need some clout. I mean, it may hurt us a little bit,
but we can go elsewhere. I mean, here's a good example: Brexit. The United Kingdom is pulling out, and now the Prime Minister, who is not in favor of Brexit but is grudgingly going around with it, is making a train wreck of it, as she intended to. But when Brexit happens, the United Kingdom is going to have to renegotiate every single trade deal. And who better than their dear old daughter, Canada, to come back into the family and work with them and build a new trading relationship. We can be their flagship trading partner, I think. And it would be wonderful. I mean, it would... And also, here's the other thing. Canada has another gigantic trading network that is untapped, and that is the Commonwealth of Nations, something that combined exceeds the GDP of the United States. So we shouldn't just be looking for the same old bag and just saying, we want the status quo antebellum. We need to go and say, listen, hey, for example, Guyana, or I'm not really sure, Malaysia. Well, wait, they're not with the Commonwealth, or India, Pakistan, groups like that, countries that either are a part of the Commonwealth of Nations or have been in the past. We have that colonial connection, or I should say imperial connection, being with the British Empire. And I mean, if we were to work that properly, we could have a massive trading bloc that could be enormously beneficial.
You might be right. This is a little above me, all this trade war stuff. I mean, it's my knowledge is it's almost nil, to say the least. I understand it. I follow what I can and try to understand what I don't understand. But I don't know. It's been something that's been there forever. It's all you and I, if for no one. And it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
It is, Lenny, but see, the thing is that, like I said, I want things to be shaken up because, I mean, we're stagnant. I mean, we're only trading with the same old people on the same old things, and there is no excitement. There is no challenge. It's just, this bare minimum is great for us. Let's go on this happy march towards globalization. And I don't personally like globalization. And I think that, dealing with, for example, China is the greatest threat to the world economy. They manipulate currency. They undercut us on pretty much every product we can possibly imagine, from toys to clothes to steel. And yet, we don't see them as a threat. We try to get along with them because, they've got a billion person population. Yet we should be looking, and I mean, personally, I don't want China to have my business because, like I said before, they're an authoritarian country. And, we shouldn't be propping up people, for all our talk about human rights and that. We shouldn't be giving trillions of dollars, between us and the United States to essentially Kim Jong-un on steroids. So there is one other gigantic trading partner that we can use, but unfortunately the Prime Minister on his jolly vacationing jaunt bungled that up, was India. Billion people in it, growing population, highly educated middle and upper classes, cheap to do business with, and yet we completely hashed it up. So time will tell. I still think we have to diversify a bit more and find some, outside the box trading partners, or take a look at ourselves and say, why are we not so competitive anymore? What can we manufacture or create that can, that these other countries with their low overhead have, or how can we eliminate this overhead? Maybe we have to look at deregulation. Maybe we have to look at sacrificing a few of our little, these are our rights and this and that. Not human rights per se, but I mean like our trading morals and things like that. Maybe we have to make a few deals with a few people. I'm just throwing things out there. I'm not saying we should do business with Hitler, but I am saying that we should be a little bit unconventional soon because the old standard of doing business is dying, and the world is changing faster than right now we can adapt, and we've got to change.
No, I agree. There's something's going to happen here. I think we'll always be in business with the United States. I mean, if you read the Art of the Deal, this is Donald Trump. This is what he does. He's Donald Trump. I don't know what else. But
the thing is that I really don't think he's that stupid. I mean, listen, I think
he's a stupid man, but I think his ego and his arrogance gets in the way. And then
yes,
like a little child, you can't do this. You're like, oh, really? And then he just goes nuts. And nuts is not a proper word. I apologize, but
he does go berserk a bit. And is he tactful? No, he is the definition of a bull in a china shop. But the thing is that I personally think that Donald Trump has had more stress on him than any other U.S. president since I don't even know. Abraham Lincoln, maybe. And I say that because look at this. Every day that man opens up his Twitter, which I just wish he would close. Because it would just the reason I say that, Lenny, is because it would literally drive the left, who despise him so much, into a panic, because people literally have jobs that rely on the president saying something on Twitter. That's literally it. They spend all day with their notifications on just one man. And if he were to pull out, it would probably, one, damage Twitter's stock value significantly because he is their largest account. He literally, I think he is one of their largest accounts. He's got 40-something million people on Twitter, which is insane. I wish I had even a quarter of his numbers. But if he just kept his mouth shut, I think we would have a lot less problem. But you see, the man every day wakes up and goes on Twitter, and he's got, thousands, and I do believe it is tens of thousands of people who he's never really done anything to, but they hate him because someone else told them to hate him. And he looks on the news. They're mad about everything. Oh, Donald Trump's wife had a kidney operation. She didn't show up for a few days. What's going on? Let's investigate. Oh, Donald Trump scratched his butt cheek with his right hand. We're going to talk about that for 6.5 months. They literally focus on everything because he's really, he's nuts and he's a bit blusterous. But they're taking it out of proportion and they're trying to stress him out. And I mean, right now, the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump cannot block people on Twitter.
No.
Well, not the Supreme Court, but a court said that. Just give me 1 second, Lenny. You bring up some news for a second, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Do you think he's going to take Dwight Ball up on his offer?
No, I don't. Just give me 1 second. The joys of having a cat is that sometimes you have to let it out.
Oh.
Just 1 second.
Okay. So while we're waiting for Ernest, I'll bring up an interesting fact here about Dwight Ball. When Dwight Ball got on stage Friday night in Gander, he asked the people to confirm and support him, and it seems like those people have. Very interesting, Andrew Fury is backing the premier. For those of you who don't know who Andrew Fury is, he's a very prestigious surgeon in Newfoundland, Labrador.
Also, the nephew of Senator Chuck Fury.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's one of his uncles is a senator. Let me see. I think it's George Fury was a senator. He just retired.
I didn't know that. I met Andrew back in November/December.
Yeah, George Fury was a senator, and before that he was speaker. Well, he's the speaker of the Senate, and he is still a senator by the looks of it. Chuck Fury is also is related to him. I think he's the son of Chuck Fury. Andrew Fury is, who was let me see. He was an MHA here in Newfoundland.
So he comes from a pretty prestigious family himself.
He does. He does come from, essentially Liberal Party royalty.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's
been able to break those political chains. So, I mean, you see a lot of children who grow up in a politically strong household that can never get out from under their family's political reign. But he certainly has. He's done well as a surgeon. He created Broken Earth, I believe it's called. And that's
Team Broken Earth.
Sorry?
Yeah, it was Team Broken Earth.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's done quite well. He's done a lot of great work in Newfoundland and worldwide. But that makes me wonder, does he run next election?
I don't know yet, because, you see, the thing is about Andrew Fury, and I do respect him, is that he's got a very nice little gig going on here. I mean, Team Broken Earth is, it's a rather prestigious project. Mm-hmm. And right now the Liberals are they're not the strongest party. So I think he's going to wait till the next election or till a by-election opens up when, there is dissatisfaction in the parties. And he'll take his chance. But I can't see him running right now. I honestly, I can't. It would have to be something pretty good, like Minister of Health. to get him into that position, because I can't see Andrew Fury sitting in the back benches with other MHAs that we all know.
I think he's definitely cabinet post material.
Oh my goodness, yes. And one of the few cabinet ministers I like is John Hagee. I actually respect Dr. Hagee immensely.
He's an interesting character.
He is, and as someone of English descent, I have a soft spot for Brits, but still, I do like I do like John Hagee. But you were talking about Donald Trump getting invited by Dwight Ball. Does he come from away? That's not going to happen.
You don't think?
I don't, because you see, I hate to say this, because Lenny, I love this province. But I'm gonna put myself in the shoes of a big city American for a moment. I'm gonna put on my badly coiffed hair, I guess, as my badly combed over hair, and I'm just gonna put myself in the mind of Donald Trump. I'm not gonna go to some Broadway play with some podunk premier of God knows where out in the middle of Timbuktu. It's not going to happen. He's the president of the United States. And his personal wealth is bigger than our deficit, which is an immensely large deficit. He could pay off our deficit and probably still have a few dollars over for McDonald's.
Yeah.
Which he apparently enjoys for some strange reason. But and as much as I love Newton and say it, is that we're not important enough for Trump to come and even spend a minute to. I mean, I don't even think we could get any of the U.S. cabinet to come to Newfoundland. I'd seriously doubt it, because we're Newfoundland. We have really nothing to offer except, hey, we had some bases here a couple of years ago. That's essentially it. I mean, we're not a big producing power now. I mean, if Muskrat Falls had gone the way it did, or the way it should have, okay, we would have been producing a lot of money. We would have been able to get a few, important U.S. governors, maybe New York and Massachusetts. Maybe the president on an off day, or even Mike the Shocker Pence. And I had to use his nickname, and if anyone knows that, I actually don't have much of a problem with Mike Pence. I mean, I know he's a bit unpopular for some of his beliefs, but I've heard that he's not that horrible a human being, but I might be wrong. I might be wrong. So please don't get too angry at me.
What's interesting though is he does. I never in a lifetime thought that a U.S. president could affect our little province until the day he announced a tariff on pulp and paper coming out of Newfoundland and Labrador, Kruger Mill. I could not believe, and I mean that's how much he digs.
He does. I mean, you got to give him that about him. He is somewhat thorough. He does look at the little things and point them out, things that he knows is going to cause a little bit of a shockwave. And the problem with this is that I hate to say it, I am not a huge fan of Kruger at all. I think Kruger has taken this province for one hell of a ride, and we've given them, I think it was like $100 and something million in corporate welfare, and they haven't even paid the interest yet.
And if everybody knows the story on Kruger and us being born and raised in Stephenville, I think we'd have a bad taste in our mouth anyway, because
we have no sympathy for Kruger Mills.
The government said we need to save Corner Brook. It's a one-trick pony. All they have is a paper mill. Well, guess what? So was Stephenville and Grand Falls. And our mills are gone. Our economy is gone. Our people are leaving. Our crime rate is increasing. Our drug addiction is increasing. Our social welfare is increasing. All because we can save Corner Brook, but we couldn't save anyone else. And we got Corner Brook saved because two of the last, I don't know how many premiers have we had in the last 5 years? 7?
Oh, it's been quite a wild ride. From Dunderdale to.
Yeah, exactly. So Dunderdale, you forgot about her. I was thinking of Danny and Dwight. They're right in the heart
Dwight,
of that area.
Yeah, oh, they are, and I mean, it makes sense that Kruger is going to be doing everything it can to court these people.
Yeah.
And the thing is about Kruger. Now, listen, I sympathize with the workers, but it's not their fault that Kruger is essentially dying on its feet. It's the fact that Kruger is, I don't think they see the paper mill in Corner Brook as strategically important to them, because if they did, they would have done a lot more, because they would have said, listen, we need to prepare for, scenario B. We need to plan for, as former MHA or as former Premier Danny Williams said, I can't say MHA because he was just using what Danny said, Plan B. And we know how well Plan B went for Stephenville, at least.
Well, that's the thing that gets me is the paper industry is dying.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, we're moving away from it. I'm a guy who likes to have paper in hand, so I think paper will probably always be a thing. But ultimately, newsprint and the like is all it's all slowly dying. So instead of keep asking for handouts, where's their strategic plan and the consultants that say, where do we move now? How do we wean ourselves off paper and bring Kruger into another development where just paper is a small portion of their revenue?
No, and I agree with you. But the thing is that Kruger, as long as Kruger has this power, and they have power over us, Lenny. I mean, people might not think that. Interesting fact, by the way, they gave, I believe it was Jerry Byrne and our good friend Eddie Joyce, very, very nice donations last election in the thousands of dollars. I've seen it on an ad. Now it might be, and I'm pretty sure it was Jerry Byrne and Eddie Joyce. Yeah. So the other thing about Kruger is that they really don't have to keep paying off this. They don't have to pay off this loan yet, because they can say to us, listen, you go ahead and call in the loan and say it's time we start paying our share. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to lay off 30 workers. We're going to lay off so many each year until there's nothing left. And your party is done for, because you see, you don't want to be the party or the MHA that loses Kruger. You don't want to lose Corner Brook Pulp and Paper. And they hold that over their heads, and the politicians get scared about that. I mean, the government doesn't want any more bad press. They've got enough. So Kruger can pretty much bully them about and get corporate welfare. And this is what it is. And listen, I'm in favor of private enterprise, and private business and things like that. But I don't like the fact that we're giving money for businesses that are unsustainable. If they were sustainable, they wouldn't need hundreds of millions of dollars in bailouts. It says to me, your strategy is flawed. Your business methods are stale and out of date. You are a dinosaur and you are going extinct. We're just holding the comet back from hitting the Earth, essentially. And also, I mean, that deal we did with Kruger, that loan guarantee, was bloody awful. If they default, we get the hydroelectric station in Deer Lake, but the thing is, we still have to pay them like a couple $1 million for it. So they're ripping us off. If they decide to cancel, just to say we default, they still get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that should be right. It should have been, listen, we'll give you $100 million, but if you miss a payment, we're taking the damn plant. That hydroelectric station is glorious and it produces a fair amount of electricity. Mm-hmm. So, we should be playing a bit hardball, but the Newfoundland government is scared, to take bold and innovative risks, because they think, Newfoundland is a very status quo kind of place. And you know what I'm trying to say?
No, very, very much so. You were making some good points. I didn't want to interrupt you, but there's always that frustration in my voice every time we do a show. because there's just so many other things we can bring up. There's so many other problems. Stephenville alone right now at our port, we're being bullied by somebody, but we don't know who it is. We've had the same port for years, the same entryway for years. The entryway is actually deeper now. And all of a sudden, it's a two-tug system for the steel boat. But Corner Brook has one. So they increased their cost by over $100,000. I mean, essentially, they've killed the port unless we can figure this out.
No, and I believe that because, Lenny, I mean, I work there, and I know how I worked there in the past, and I know the situation. And Corner Brook's harbor, Corner Brook, you have to go down the Humber River to get to Corner Brook. That's a, I know it's a bit of a, not as a tight a turn as going into the port of Stephenville, but, it is still kind of, out of the way in that. And I wouldn't be surprised if certain forces, either it be a certain Liberal MP whose hometown happens to be Corner Brook, or, certain cabinet ministers in the Newfoundland government who might have authority, might have some, some pull with the Atlantic Pilotage group, or whatever the heck whatever they're called there. This seems like, a competitor that, they're worried about. And, hey, it's time to choke them off before, they start to actually gain some traction. And we don't have the power to fight it because, you see, the MP is not going to do anything because the MP also represents Corner Brook. And as we on the West Coast know, what Corner Brook wants, Corner Brook gets. And damn all the rest. So unless there's some intervention from God himself, or at the very least a federal cabinet minister, we're not going to see any changes on this. And as sad as it is for me, and these forces are going to choke out this port and this wonderful opportunity. And Stephenville doesn't have much left. No. Our airport needs, to be reinvented. Our harbor needs the business, and it has the opportunity. We have the space to build warehousing. We could be, a transshipment point for the Atlantic, for the Americans and everything like that. We could be a stopover, a refueling stop, a pub stop. You know what I mean? For these ships.
Yeah.
But, every time we're starting to look like we're getting ahead, somebody else comes in and says, listen, I'm sorry, Podunk, West Coast, Newfoundland, and Labrador, you've gotten a bit too big for your britches. We're going to have to knock you down a peg or two.
Absolutely. We just had an airport sign a deal under his new council with the American Air Force that, I believe it's the American Air Force, that when they do overseas flights, that they would stop at Stephenville and refuel, and that's written in stone. That's something they have to abide by, and it's bringing in a substantial amount of money finally, thankfully. But we turn around and then it's, now you need a two-tug system for your port, so we fix one problem and get another bigger one. And
that's 100% true. And we just can't seem to get ahead here. And that's kind of the story of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's in general. Outside of, say, St. John's and Corner Brook, who really benefits in this province?
No, absolutely.
And it's terrible to see because, we've always been a divided place. Newfoundland has always been a very, very divided island. Labrador as well. But I'm going to more give Newfoundland on this one. And I'm sorry to our Labrador friends who are all fantastic. But, you think about it. First, it was, between the English and the French. Then it was the Catholics and the Protestants. And now it's between, St. John's, Corner Brook, and everyone else.
Yes.
And maybe Portugal Cove, St. Philip's, because they're starting to grow. But, they're not big enough yet. Sorry, Portugal Cove, St. Philip's. And by the way, we have terrible names for towns because that is a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Where does Portugal Cove begin and St. Philip's end? And there's like there's so many weird new town names coming up, like Middle Cove something or another, and it's like 4 different names at once. Either way, rebrand yourselves. I just want to say that. Because but then again, you'll never have as great a name as Stephenville or Port Basque. So gotta rep my hometown, man.
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Is we've talked about regionalization in some aspects before on this program. I've always had a dream, and not the way that it's drawn up right now by the Liberals, of how regionalization would work, but more in a regionalization aspect within what Fort McMurray has done. And it's not perfect by any means, you know that, but they were successful in amalgamating a huge area to come under one jurisdiction. And I think, depending on who you talk to, it was better. I've always wanted that for the Bay St. George area. I mean, the way it was drawn up by the specialists at the regionalization meeting was absolutely ridiculous. But I've always wanted that Bay St. George core to be the regional municipality of Bay St. George, operate under one government, have representation from every area, and see how that would work. And that would give us some strength. But right now, we're divided in Bay St. George as much as everywhere else. I mean, in a span of what, maybe 20 kilometers, we have 3 municipalities. I mean, there's no strength in that.
No, I agree. But like I said, it ties into what I said. We have always been a very divided place. And our one even could say, and God forgive me for saying this, and I hate to admit it, we're almost petty about it. You always hear, for example, I mean, those friggin' corner brookers, those bunch from Port Basque, or those guys from the Zing. You always have these little strange rivalries, and it makes us, less willing to work together. And I can't see any benefit of it until we until we essentially politically grow up.
Yeah. Because absolutely.
And I mean, this is embarrassing for essentially, one of the oldest parts of the New World, as it were. I mean, we were the first overseas British colony. We are essentially, the grandfather of Canada, and yet, sometimes I hate to say it, we act like, this overgrown man-child. We're essentially the Jack Black of Canada.
Excellent.
And I hate to say it, Lindy, because I mean, I love this place, dude.
I do too.
But I mean, like, but sometimes you got to be cruel to be kind, and it's bad. I mean, that's part of the reason I think our population is declining, because we're so that, and our government is just so weird on regulations. I mean, Newfoundland and Labrador is a very difficult place to do business in. Yeah. It's a very business unfriendly atmosphere, despite what the government says. And I think it's going to continuously contribute to our decline. And people might say to us, listen, we need to bring in immigrants. Immigrants are the future. No, not exactly. Immigrants are a very welcomed addition to us. I have many friends who are immigrants. I love, the cultures. I love them very much, but they're not the solution, because not a lot of them stay here either. I mean, we brought in Corner Brook, they brought in 4 Syrian families, and I believe 2 or 3 of them have already left and have gone to Toronto. So it says, how, and I don't think it's due to racism or something like that. I think it's because this is not a place where, you can walk down the street and get a job. No. It's not a place where you feel, like, hey, listen, I can start my business and I can be a success. It's not like that, because when you try to do, like, there was a guy who had a restaurant in St. John's. I think he was Palestinian, and he just said, I can't work here. One, it's too cold, which, being in St. John's, I understand that, that's an impossible place to live. St. John's is just too darn cold. Mm-hmm. And 2, he said, the government regulates me to death. And if I was the government, I would have looked at that one person and said, oh, crap, we need to fix this. Maybe we can make things a little regulated. not enough that it's going to give us all salmonella and kill us, but enough that, you're not going to spend, $40,000 to open a $20,000 food truck.
No, absolutely.
No, and our population problem, as we were discussing off air, is, we are the only place in Canada that isn't showing a growth in our population.
No, absolutely.
And now listen, like I said, immigrants are fine dandy, but you see, we need to look at it and say, listen, why isn't the population who's currently there, why aren't they reproducing? Why aren't they being economically successful? Why aren't they starting new businesses? Why are they falling behind in education and financial competency and things like that? I think that people who say, immigrants are the future of Canada. Okay, partly yes, but you've got to kind of identify the problems amongst your native citizens of all colors, who have who have been here generations upon generations, be they white or Asian, Southeast Asian, things like that, and you have to say, listen, what can we do to keep our local population growing while still bringing in quality immigrants who can contribute to our society and develop it to be even better? And because I don't feel, Lenny, that we're doing that. We're just saying that, listen, we just need the immigrants, bring them in en masse. It's fine, it's great, it's wonderful, and somehow sooner or later it'll balance itself out. And as we've seen in, for example, places like Germany, it is not the case. Quantity is not always better than quantity or quality. So I think in order to fix the problem with Canada, like our aging, and some people might say this is racist, but I mean, we need to look at a good balance between the minorities who are in Canada and our majority white population. I'm sorry, this is what Canada has. It has a majority white population. As much as that angers some people to hear, they were essentially the ones who, controversially have built this country to what it is. And, I think I still have, am I saying that this is still a white, a purely white nation? No, I'm not. But I'm still saying is that I think there's still something left, like a spark left in our, in that core, white Canadian identity. And this comes from someone who, as you know, my personal history, Lenny, I'm very much in favor of diversity in culture, as you personally know. But I guess you can see where I'm coming from. I mean, because you need to have that healthy balance. And it also plays into what I was saying off air earlier about, the fact that right now the Canadian Army is looking at bringing in essentially mercenaries, foreign recruits. You don't even need to be a citizen soon or a permanent resident to join the Canadian Armed Forces. And that speaks to a situation, because when I was in Peru, the police forces there in the army, they have absolutely no issue finding recruits amongst the people. And Peru is smaller in population than Canada. Canada's got 37 million, and Peru has around 32 million people. And they can't get in. They have too many police recruits. They can't post them all. The same with the military, same with, different branches of government. And yet in Canada, we have a bigger population, and yet we're struggling to find people who are, I have to admit this, very much essential. We need the military. We especially need the police. And I don't know if changing our standards is the right way to go. I mean, for the sake of diversity, it doesn't work for me. In these kinds of roles, in these essential roles, and I'm sure, Lenny, you got to agree with me, being a police officer is generally an essential role in a society. We need to have that law and order. In this circumstance, I really could care less about diversity. I would rather much care about having quality candidates who are who are physically and mentally capable of handling this very difficult and sometimes incredibly dangerous jobs. This is the kind of place where we can't just look at it through that intersectional lens. It shouldn't have to apply in this circumstance. What we need to do is, as I said, it ties into our root causes here about the disillusionment in our white Canadians and even our Afro Canadians and other communities. Why is it that people aren't joining the military like they were? Why aren't they joining the police? And I personally think it has to do with a lot of these social movements now. I mean, it's such a dirty thing now to be a police officer, whereas when I was growing up, it was awesome. You wanted to be a cop as a kid. You wanted to go around with a badge and fight crime and help people. And now they treat a police officer as if he's some sort of SS stormtrooper ready to beat up anyone who's not white. And I think that we need to look at changing the mentality and inspiring people, and taking pride in national service. And personally, I wouldn't mind having a form of conscription in Canada, especially for the military. I think it would be like a form of national service. It worked incredibly well in South Africa under the people will get mad at me for saying this, but the old government had a national service system. And I know guys who also live in Fort McMurray who were, into the military at the tail end of it during national service. And they thought it was, it was wonderful. You learn new skills. You learned, you had pride in your nation. And our veterans are some of the most patriotic Canadians I know. I mean, I've never met one. Generally, I've never met a veteran who wasn't a patriotic Canadian. And I think that, I know I'm getting a bit rambling. I apologize, but I just think that, in short, we need to address these root causes that are affecting our population and are causing the need for more and more immigration, because like I said, immigration is wonderful. It is a good part, but we do need to be selective. As a selective society, I think is you get the best and the brightest, and you thrive and grow and develop because of that. And that's really just what I want to say there, Lenny. And what's your thoughts?
On immigration, I don't have a whole lot, to be quite honest, because I'm not educated much on it. It's a hard thing, especially when you think the way I do. It should be, needs to be strategic and beneficial. And then on the other hand, you have people who didn't grow up in a privileged society such as us, where we don't have to worry every day about being shot or gassed or any of that stuff. So it's one of those tough dilemmas, and it's something I'm not educated on. I need to educate myself more on, and it's something that I think will always be an issue.
And someday, Lenny, I'd love to take you down to Lima with me. And I tell you this, you will get another perspective on it, because despite the fact that we come from a privileged society, I think there's a lot we can learn from societies that are, considered, I guess, developing and in the second world. Like, for example, that entrepreneurial spirit. Because they're entrepreneurial because they actually really have no choice. And I mean, it's good and it's bad. It's bad because, you've put everything out on the table, and if you blow it, well, you're in some significant trouble. But at the same time, it gives you that amazing incentive to succeed. It's that sink or swim mentality. And I think that's something that lately this generation of Canadians, our generation and the one that's coming onwards, I think is missing. Although, what's our? Yeah,
I think we're missing it. Not necessarily because we don't want to, but everything costs so much today, and that's a fault of all three. governments. That's like all three parties. None of them have ever corrected that.
No, yeah, you're 100%.
And it's one of those things. Is I have a business diploma. I'm currently working on a community studies diploma, which some see as community development / social economic. So, but I have this unique perspective of having both sides now. And I see how both sides can actually work together to create a better universe. Because you can't have all these business owners with all these tax breaks, but then they're too greedy, I guess, to hire anybody. So it's okay to say, we've made $2 billion in profit this year after taxes and expenses. Okay. Our unemployment rate's at 15%, so maybe you should start hiring some people. Well, no, can't do that. That'll cut into my profit loss. Well, I'm sorry, you don't need $2 billion for the profit. I mean, you could essentially buy some countries for $2 billion. Like,
yeah, now, to an extent, Lenny, it isn't the job of a business to be a social institution, unless that's the way it was set up. But essentially, the purpose of a business is to make money, and as much money as they can. Now, is that
actually the point of a business? I'll challenge you on that. Is to provide a service that benefits the people.
It's primarily that is part, yes, and I'll give you that much, and I apologize for that. But at the same time, the absolute essential purpose of a business is to make money, because without money, a business cannot continue. And then we have Kruger. So unless we want to be subsidizing it just to provide some jobs or provide a service, it has to be sustainable, or we face a bit of trouble. But that's all we can do. That's definitely a conversation for another day.
Well, certainly. And there's one other topic we need to touch on this week.
Sure.
And that's the NAPE severance payouts are coming.
I am incredibly against this. I think it's. I mean, I love the fact that the unions are saying this is it's going to be big for the local economy. I think we're going to see a lot of vacations to Cuba coming up the next year.
Most certainly, but by the sounds of it, right now, is there was no cap ever on severance.
No, but I mean,
now it's capped at 20 weeks. I thought it was gone altogether, but apparently not. Apparently,
it can come back. It has to be if it's renegotiated in. So I mean, who's to say that next table of union negotiations that they can't say, listen, we're going to start severance again for new employees. That's it.
It's not gone. In this article from CBC, it's this recent contract between the provincial government and NAPE offered early severance buyouts to anybody with more than a year of service. Severance for current employees is now tied to how many years of service they worked, but it will now be capped at 20 weeks. So if you work there for 40, you're getting 40 weeks of severance, but going forward, it's going to be capped at 20 by the time of it.
And this is essentially, a payout, a bribe, essentially, kind of like, we just want to try to make some friends. Here's some cash. It really does save us a couple of $1 million a year in the long run, which is nice. But $35 million for a province that's already pretty much bankrupt is, it's just another nail in the coffin.
If we get this off the book, so that covers 96% of the core essential employees, apparently. I think I said that, right? The core workers and those who work directly for government. There's so many people that work for government, man. Like 96% is 3,400 people. Good Lord.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, Lenny, what's the percentage here? I believe around 7 to 8% of Newfoundland works for the government.
Wow.
Which, I mean, is about 70 to 80,000 people or more. That's a rather big number.
Yeah.
And, someone whose family was in the public service. they provide an essential service, but at the same time, it's not always perfect, like nothing is. Newfoundland, especially Newfoundland civil service, has its own unique challenges and its own unique criticisms. I don't think the bailout was the way to go. Like the severance payout, I should say, not bailout, but the severance payout was the right way to go.
I think it was if the severance stopped forever. Like if in a contract, unless I'm reading it wrong, but by the sounds of it, that's what it sounds like. A recent contract between the provincial government and NAIP offered early severance payouts to anyone with more than a year of service. Severance for current employees is now tied to how many years they've worked, but will now be capped. Will be capped at 20. So does that mean they're only getting paid 20 weeks of severance and then it's gone for good, or does that mean it's still there and going forward you'll only be able to ever get 20 weeks?
No, I'm not 100%. I'd have to look into this a bit further, but I mean, it is somewhat scary, because I mean, it's just essentially it's the song that never ends.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how it goes. I guess time will tell, and we'll see if this has been beneficial or a complete disaster.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, this has been fun. I have missed doing this, and I've forgotten how the.
Yeah, me too. The time goes quick. And we're chatters, so both of us. So we kind of need a timer put on us, but it's. I think this is something we're going to definitely try to do now once a week, and certainly when we're both back in Newfoundland. Well, when I get back to Newfoundland, it was always the trouble of finding space. And we thought it would be easier once I moved home, and it got tougher. But
it actually did. That's the sad part about it. It's easier for us right now to do this podcast in two completely different provinces.
It is, and it's funny because it's tough when you're here to stay on top of it. But with that being said, I will try my best to stay on top of it. It is something we should do every week, unless something comes up. And when I get home in September, we need to find a space to do this.
Yeah, definitely.
To do this show and to grow it, because this has the potential to be something.
Oh, it really does, and hopefully we can get a few guests on that. I've got a few people in the works I'd love to have on, and so keep listening for new surprises, and you never know who we'll get.
No, absolutely. Maybe who knows? Maybe there'll be some fun by-elections or something come up, and I mean we're coming into a good year here. Once 2019 hits, we're going to have some fun on this show, because that'll be.
Oh, are we ever?
Because it's going to be fierce, I think, come 2019.
Oh, it is going to be. It's going to be a bloodbath, I think. It's going to be an absolutely vicious circle of fighting, and it's just going to be wonderful. I mean, politically, I should say. I mean, it's just going to be a very politically interesting
it's going to be politically awesome, and who knows? Imagine if we're not on the same side come 2019. That'll make the show even better.
Oh my goodness, yes it will. But Lenny, my friend, I think we've come to the end for tonight.
Yes, me too. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Ernest, I want to thank you for your time. It's been fun as always.
Always is, man.
And
always is.
We will certainly keep this up, and hopefully find out a way to get an actual podcast put on like Google Play and iTunes.
Yeah, we really should be looking at that.
Absolutely. But until next week, my friends, that is it from me, Lenny, and Ernest, and the Islander Podcast. And thank you for listening. And as always, follow us on our Facebook page at the Islander Podcast, and follow us on YouTube at the Islander Podcast. And be sure to subscribe and hit the little ding button, so every time we go live, you will be informed. Thank you. God bless, and good night.